Hey fellas, welcome to the show. Today it's story time. We're going to be talking about my attempt to climb Mount Agung in Bali. That was a couple of months back. What prompted this? A few days back, I was watching a video of this guy who got lost up in the Canadian forest for I think 9 days. I think it was 9 or 12 days. It was a harrowing tale. It was a fascinating insight into the human will to survive and what humans would be willing to do. And it just harkens back to my fascination with survival stories. They tend to be one of my favorite genres. Probably after sci-fi, it has to be my favorite genre. Some of my favorite movies of all time, All Is Lost. All Is Lost is such a gem, such a hidden gem, right? That just has a few lines in terms of spoken words. Everything else is just visual, and it's a visual masterpiece. You just see one person throughout the movie. Yeah, it's a must watch. It's a beautifully made movie, and yeah, puts you right in the field. There's All Is Lost, Alone. Yeah, great movies, right? As well, movies. 127 Hours. Then I think it was Sanctum. Yeah, I just love survival movies, right? And yeah, watching this guy's tale, it just put me in this state. Reminded me of some of the things I felt in a much shorter span of time, right? So this guy was lost for, I think, as I said, 9 days. I think it was 9 days. Well, I was lost for a fraction of that. But I could still glimpse the state that people could descend into when they're lost path towards the goal. Well, and when the goal is hiking. I mean this in the larger life sense. But that actually would be treated in the larger life sense. Yeah. So I'd start the day in the most exciting manner, right? I was so excited, just a few days back. So this was in Bali, a couple of months back. I spent a couple of months in Bali. It was a magical time. A few days before this Mount Agung climb, I'd been to Mount Batur, which was a really easy climb, and I had so much fun doing that. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was just the sheer state of euphoria that I was in at the top. And after people were done with watching the sunrise, it was pretty much me alone there. I spent a bunch of time at the top there and just immersing myself in the beauty, and just there was something there. I still can't place my finger on it, but there was something there. It just put me in a state that I think might have been the happiest state I've been in a long time. Yeah, I think, yeah, I still am trying to unravel what it could have been, but don't have any good answers. But you don't really need to understand, right? Sometimes you just gotta. I do actually feel the express need to understand things, even when I should just feel them. But yeah, that's more of a feature than a bug, I think, if I use it as a feature. Anyways, so I'd been there, and my plan was the 3 main peaks around that area. So one is Mount Batur, then there's Mount Agung, and then there's Mount Agung. So they get progressively taller. Mount Agung is the tallest peak in Bali. So my plan was to do these 3 peaks in 3 days. Unfortunately, on this next day, because I was tired to my bone, I wasn't able to wake up on time, so I just had to cancel that plan. So that just left me with Mount Agung. I was doing that one day before my flight to Malaysia. So yeah, I didn't really have a chance to just stay there up in the night, which is what I wanted to do. But anyways, so I start out excited. On the way there, I was listening to a podcast. I still vividly remember that because it's really excited. It's your memories that gets told in such a more vivid way, right? So I still remember the bike ride, and it was quite chilly because I'd taken a shower, my hair was wet, and I was riding at a speed of 80 kilometers an hour. And even though this was Bali, this tropical area, it still was chilly. Like I literally could feel the shivers. And yet, the anticipation of me climbing the mountain, it just made everything so almost fantastical. Because it did have those kinds of vibes, right? So I reached there, I get lost initially because I'm not using any trail maps, and this is not a well-trodden path. So I get lost initially for the first 10 minutes, waste 20 minutes like that to finally find the path. And then I'm on the path, I'm talking with myself, which is something I love to do. talking about how beautiful the scene is. So the sun is just starting to rise. You just see it's dawn, the purplish sky. And you see you're at the altitude of, I think, above 1200 at that point. Even as you're starting the trek, you're at an altitude of about 1100, 1200. You see the lights of Bali just below you shimmering in the dark. It was a magical sight. And so you keep on climbing, you keep on talking, you're in that zone, and before you know it, you're off the track that you're supposed to be. And not just off the track, you're not even on any track, right? So what happened then was, I didn't realize it, but I just started taking more and more riskier paths, because I thought that, okay, so this is not a well-trodden path, I know that. That must mean that I'll have to, at some places, I'll have to make a judgment call, right? So I might not be sure that this is the path ahead, but I'll just have to make that call and just go ahead, because I won't be able to, unlike Mount Tour, which is a very well-trodden path. Over here, I won't have that luxury, so I'll just have to make that call again and again, that okay, let's have enough percentage chance that this could be the path, and then you keep on doing that. But progressively, probably in an hour, I realized that, okay, so I'm not on the path and I'm stuck. So what do? I just go forward, right? Because I know that the mountain is in front of me, the summit is in front of me, and it's a ravine. I should have learned the topographical terms for describing the anatomy of a mountain, but basically, you know the bits, so this is a volcanic mountain, right? And so the volcanoes, they've got these, I don't know how to describe it, but when they blast the lava might flow at certain places, right? And then they might create these ridges, or is it ravines? I don't know. But basically, depressions, right? And so I was just falling into depression. The problem with this particular depression was that there are a few problems, right? So first of all, the depression is very deep. While I was coming back at around 6 in the night time, well, in the evening time, I just saw how deep the ravines were. Like, they are 500 meters deep, right? And you don't realize that when you're in the bottom of the ravine, because this is a tropical mountain, so everything's thickly covered in trees and plants and shrubs. So you don't realize just how deep you are in it. So that was, yeah. So what I had to then do, and also, this was Bali, something it rains a lot. And not just that, but I think the quality of the soil is very gravelly. So it's very difficult to climb because it's just very slippery, right? And I fell down so many times. I took so many risks because I wanted to get to the top, get back to the trail. Try that, kept on falling down, kept on battering myself, battered and bruised, walked onwards, trekked onwards. And that started becoming this kind of stream, but it was a boulder stream, right? So it's massive rocks that come down, that go up in front of you and go down and back behind you. And this is when it starts getting really terrifying, right? Because first of all, it's slippery. Secondly, some of these climbs or falls, they are 10 meters, 15 meters. If you fall down, that's gonna hurt real bad. And also at these points, somewhere around these points, I realized that, okay, I'm stuck. The state of mind I'm in is that I might not be able to find my way back. And not only is it not being able to find your way back, but you're actually stuck in these ravines. So think about it this way, right? You are basically stuck at a point from which you had to climb outwards. But climbing outwards is almost an impossibility because of first of all, the sheer elevation of the sheer angle of the ravines, and secondly, because of the nature of that, right? So also the trees, lots of trees that I tried to hold on to give me support to help me climb up, they were rotting, they were decaying, and I broke so many branches and I broke so many bones trying to use these, but no avail, right? And then I'm in this state for more than 3 hours, but I had to start making more and more, I'd say, riskier decisions, because the points at which the thing that I was trying to do, if that didn't go off, if that hadn't worked out, I would be sitting in a state of hurt, real pain. So I had to start taking those riskier decisions, and there was this one point where I became so desperate. And I remember this vividly, right? Because I made a judgment call that, okay, this seems like I'm trying to go on the other side, so the trail, let me try to describe it, right? So the ravine is obviously in front of me and behind me. On the sides of me are two of the, how do you call it? Of the elevations, let's call them that, because I'm in the depression, right? So the trail that I was on, that was supposed to be on my left side, but that seemed like an impossibility. There were places where it seemed like I could get on the other side, but for that I had to cross the Boulder River. So I did that this one time, I got stuck, and that's when I realized that, I'll have to make I started having some crazy thoughts that, this is insane, I shouldn't have done that. I just was talking to myself about not ever going down, just hoping that, okay, I can find my own trail, I can create my own trail, because mountains, they can be pretty dangerous places. So I had all these thoughts zooming in my mind, and there was this one point in time where it just reached its climax because I was stuck. I'd just taken a massive risk to get to this side. As soon as I get to that side, I realized that I'm now stuck here and I can't even go back to where I just came from. And there was literally hardly anything I could have done from that point where I was stuck. And yeah, at that point I started thinking about how I could actually get people start shouting. I literally started shouting, but this is not a mountain that a lot of people climb. And also, I think because I was so far away from, it's a massive mountain in terms of its area, right? So even if I was like a few kilometers away from the trail, which I probably at that point might have been, no one's going to be able to listen to me. So yeah, it was getting terrifying, and I remember the state of mind I was in. I remember the thoughts I was having, like I just love being in the mountains by myself, love being away from everything and everyone. That's one of my, I wouldn't say one of my favorite, but I just love that state, right? Where you just yourself with your thoughts, your ideas. It's a very beautiful state to be in. It's a very profoundly moving state to be in. You just burst out with ideas, with insights into the nature of the world, etc., etc., right? So yeah, I was thinking that maybe I probably shouldn't have how much I would have loved having told someone that I'm here, but no one knew that, so if I was going to be stuck there, that was going to be the end of me. Well, that was a series of thoughts that I was having. And when I was stuck there in the last moment, in the last place that I referred to, I just realized that, I'm not gonna, even before then, there were moments where I just felt like there's no point going ahead because this is just way too risky. Probably in those 3 hours, I had to overcome my comfort zone more times than I had to overcome in a long, long time. But that one moment that I'm just referring to right now, just give me a second. Yeah, so that when I was there, I realized that I just had to take the kind of risk. I might lose my life, but if I don't take that risk, I'm going to be stuck here. Tomorrow's my flight. I've just got to do something. I've just got to find the way. I kept on saying that and saying that. I think that helped me a lot during these hours. And finally, I had to make the call. The boulder, let me describe the situation, right? It was very precipitous. I was in a boulder, very slippery boulder, which was at an incline. So I had to walk like an animal. I had to crawl, hold things with my hands and my feet. Because obviously my shoes were not well suited for this. They were running shoes. And climbing wet, slippery, moldy rocks, you obviously had to use your hands. There were a few places where I had slipped on these rocks before, these boulders before, and that hurts. So I had to I had to channel my inner animal, and I do that. But then I look behind me if I slip, and it's very easy to slip, right? Because just a few centimeters away, 30, 40 centimeters away from me is a fall, 15 meters down, and that's most likely if I slip at all over here, that's where I'm most likely heading. That's the only place I'm heading. So yeah, it was I think that must have been the most terrified I've felt in a long time, probably ever. Yeah, because you're consciously aware, right? So when I've been in accidents, like on a bike, Actually, there was this one time on my bike where I got into an accident, which probably was the closest I felt to death. So I was coming down from a mountain, and my brakes had failed. Yeah, I know, I'm a genius, right? I'm a genius for having done that, right? But anyways, I don't know why, but I just decided, I knew that the brakes had failed, well, they were working, but very weakly, right? And if you've got any common sense, you know that you don't ever go down the mountainside with brakes which are not operating at full capacity. And yet, for some reason, well, I do know what, partly I do know what the reason was. I'm not going to say that here, but so I just go down the mountain, and lo and behold, I fall down. So there's a curve, and there's a bike coming from the opposite side. I fall down, obviously, and that hurts me, right? My hands are bleeding, my elbows are bleeding, my knees are already bleeding. This guy helps me up, and he tells me that, what the hell are you doing? It was a very nice chap. He tells me that, you need some help getting down, and he's very gracious, right? For some reason, I don't take heed of the fact that I just fell down so drastically and so close to the precipice, and I again get back on my bike. Don't listen to his advice, but his wise words, and just get back on my bike and go down again. I didn't even have to pedal, right, because it's gravity doing all the work. And then around the second curve after this, nothing happens, right? It's smooth sailing relatively because I'm using my shoes. But the curve after this, the slope, the incline is much more steeper, so I'm going much faster, and because it's much faster, my brakes are not working. And I realized that 100 meters away from that curve, that my brakes are just completely failed, and my legs, they're not going to be able to do any work. So I remember my state of mind once I realized that, okay, I'm heading straight to and beyond that, so it's obviously a curve, right? Beyond that curve, so I'm heading straight to that, there are some boulders, small boulders, which would stop, but these boulders are like 50 centimeters high, right? They're not gonna, if I go at a certain angle, they're not gonna stop me from falling down. If I fall down, it's hundreds of meters down. So it's obviously almost looks like a done deal at that point, right? Thankfully, I mean, this is a bit silly, but thankfully, instead of just going like this, I start skidding, which saves my life, right? Because when you're skidding, basically, your body's gonna take the brunt of the force, but you're gonna slow down much faster. And also at the embankment, because your center of gravity is gonna be much lower, the chance of you falling over are much lower. So that's what happened. That was a brutal, damn, I was like, Jeez. But I remember the thoughts I had in my mind during those few milliseconds. I was thinking of my mom, thinking of my dad, thinking of the things I didn't do in my life, thinking of, yeah. It's interesting, the things that you think of when you feel like you're on the verge of death. But anyway, so those are the thoughts. I think that probably was the closest I've been to death. Yeah, anyway, so back to Bali, a couple of months back, where I'm climbing the mountain. Well, I'm stuck in that place. I had to make that call. I had to make that jump. It is a literal jump, right? And I do it. That's obviously not the end of the story, because then I had to climb up this side of the mountain, which is almost very steep. I wouldn't say 90 degrees, but 80 degrees. And I do that. I had to do that because I know that if I don't do this, I'm gonna get weaker and weaker. My spirits are going to flag further and further. I'm going to be more and more demoralized, dispirited, and this is the moment, right? I just took the biggest call moments ago by jumping over this thing and getting to the other side, and I had to use the momentum, because at that point, when you make that call, when you jump, you've got an adrenaline rush, right? And so your system's feeling it, your system's being fueled of adrenaline, and you've got to use it. It can make you do stupid things, but it can also make you make the calls which are in those moments which are absolutely life-affirming and life-saving. And for me, that call was, I don't want to say that it was life-saving, right? Because this was like literally within 3 hours of me starting, I had food. I actually was thinking about, okay, what if I get stuck? What's my plan? I didn't really have a plan there, because first of all, there's not much you can do, right? It's not like there's loads of people who come there. Loads of other places, like if you're tracking in Colorado, loads of people are going to be frequenting the locations, most locations, right? So you might be able to, and then there's helicopter rescue, and then there's, I didn't have GPS, I didn't have any of the thing. Notice about GPS is that the thing which saved me probably, because I'd gotten lost in these mountains and these forests for a long time, and I was thinking that, okay, how do I find my way back to the trail, right? Because even if I do get out of this ravine, which is step one, I might still not be able to find the trail. And if I don't find the trail, that might not get me any closer to my goal. So I had two goals at that point, right? One is summiting the mountain, and one is getting back alive, right? So it might not get me closer to either of my goals. So then what I decided, my phone doesn't have GPS, there's no signal there, but what it does have is very slow. I don't know how it works, but if you wait enough time, then it adjusts. Like if you wait minutes, it adjusts and shows you where you are. Now you don't see where the trail is on Google Maps, even though I'm using satellite maps. You don't see the trail. Maybe if I hadn't used satellite maps, maybe it would have shown me the trail. Something to try out the next time. Anyways, I realized, okay, I know where I got lost. So I was using Strava, so I know where I got lost. So I just need to retrace my steps back. By the way, I tried that, but to no avail, because going back was just impossible. Then the other thing I tried was using my Google Maps, right? Trying to there was this point of the trail which I hadn't been to yet, which is on the way, which was the first stopping point on the way to the summit. And so my whole thing was to orient my direction towards that stopping point, pausing point. And yeah, so that's where I oriented myself, and that was immensely helpful. And then I made that call, and then I started climbing and fall down again and again, and finally find the trail. And it felt so good. I think I screamed at that point because I didn't have the energy, because I'd just been so battered and so bruised and so dispirited by that point, because some part of me was like, I won't be able to, I knew that I was going to be able to find a way back to life. That was always going to happen, right? Because you got days before I might have, in the worst case scenario, I might have missed my flight. But in the worst case scenario, you're still going to be able to find the way back. Because if there's one thing that you learn from survival stories, humans, and me included, because I've been in situations like this, I've got a very strong will to live. I love life, I love the idea of it, I love the actuality of it, I love the potential of it, I love the beauty of it, I love the tragedy of it, I love the whole of it, right? Life is just beautiful. And I want to live a very long life, like hopefully I can live for thousands of years. But my point is that I was always going to find a way back. Like even when it seemed like the odds were insurmountable, I was always going to find a way back. The question was, how long would it have taken, and what might have it cost me? Thankfully, it just took me 3 hours to get out there on the trail. But it's just like, the interesting part for me in the 3 hours was getting an insight into, when you're in situations which you haven't been in before, it just basically allows you to uncover a part of you, a facet of yourself, of your psyche that you hadn't explored before. And that is such an inner exploration, to me is as beautiful as outer exploration, right? Actually, it's even more fascinating. And the whole point of doing these things is that you get a glimpse of you that you hadn't, because you need to expose yourself to certain stimuli for certain parts of you to come out, and for your conscious self to interact with those parts, right? That's just how it goes. For example, you wouldn't know how you would react if it came to you saving your life, if it came to you risking something to save your life, unless you were put in that situation, right? You wouldn't know how you would react if you had to make the trolley problem call of sacrificing yourself to save the planet, right? I mean, hopefully most people would choose the planet over themselves. But you wouldn't choose, like even in situations with much lower stakes, you wouldn't know how you become, what parts of you come out, unless you are in that situation. So for me, it was a very interesting psychological experiment. But then I get out of it, out of the mess, out of the hell. Whew. Okay, wait a second. Right, so we're back. So I get back on the trail, and I know that's the trail because that looks very different from all the mess I've been in for the last 3 hours close to. And I start climbing up, At that point, I started realizing something. Right, first of all, the ground's very slippery, but secondly, because I've been in that state, my rate of ascent is much lower and much slower than I would have wanted it to be, and so my progress is very slow. Anyways, it takes me a while, but I think after it took me, got out of that mess around 7ish, and I reached the top, well, close to the top, which is where the next part of our story picks up. I reached there's this particular point, very rocky and very steep. I reached that point after 4 hours of climbing, with 2 stops, one to eat. I had a bag of nachos and a bag of biscuits, and one to just admire the view from a point which was probably 200 meters. I was admiring Mount Agung, I think. No, Mount Agung, Mount Agung. I was admiring Bali. It was a very sunny day. It was a beautiful day. Oh, I remember the visuals vividly. It was amazing, yeah. And then after a few hours, I just crossed 2 groups, by the way. I just crossed at that point. One group is coming down. So what a lot of people do is they start climbing around. There are a few different routes. What a lot of people do is they start climbing around 2 in the night and reach 11 in the night, and reach the top around just before the sunrise to catch the sunrise, right? Because catching the sunrise, I did that from Mount Batur. Unfortunately, the sunrise was a bit clouded by the clouds, so it wasn't the most majestic sunrise, but yeah, it was just gorgeous. So that's what a lot of people did. So I saw the groups coming down, and then there was another group. There was this place, I think around 2,700 meters, where they just cleared out a lot of the plants, and they erected these tents, so they probably spent nights there. So that was, yeah, so those are the only 2 groups I came in contact with, and there was another group that I came in contact with while coming down. So I climbed up, and then I reached this point where it just starts getting really steep, and it starts getting really, really rocky and slippery. I don't know what it was. A part of it was psychological timidity, right? Because for the last 4 hours, I felt very timid. I felt very subdued. Unlike Mount Batur, where I was just running, I was climbing like a rock, like a machine rather. Over here, I felt the psychological weakness. I felt timid. I felt subdued. I felt, yeah. Part of it was obviously that a lot of my spirit had been sapped, because when I started the climb, as I alluded to, as I referenced to at the start, I was so excited because my whole thing on that day was, I'm gonna make this best day, right? That was how I'd started, the mindset I'd started in, and literally within an hour, all of that just fades away, and you just think of how to survive. So that has a bit of a psychological toll on you, and unfortunately, I hadn't prepared, right? So there are a lot of lessons learned from this. I hadn't prepared that, okay, if I ever were, you don't anticipate those things, but what I should have anticipated is that there will be points on this climb where I might feel subdued, where I might not feel that I want to give it my best, and want to continue giving it my best. And at that point, what do I say to myself? What do I say to myself to bring out the best, right? So I hadn't done that work prior to the climb, because sure, you can do a bit of that on the climb, but you do need to do a lot of that before the climb, because in the climb you're going to be in the throes of these things, so you're not going to be able to find it as easy to detach yourself. And if you can't find it as easy to detach yourself, the state of mind that you are in is going to be the dominant state of mind. So that's what made it difficult. So once I reached those rocks, I decided, okay, but I didn't do that. Gives me pause, because it looks very steep, it looks scary, it looks terrifying. And I start climbing up, and within 20-30 minutes of climbing up, I made some progress. The summit at that point is around 200-300 meters away, so pretty close to summit at that point. And I wanted to meditate at the top, I wanted to do some yoga at the top. Yeah, I just wanted to, because I was going to be alone at the top, so I just wanted to do something spiritual at the top, right? And yeah, and do some writing, maybe write a poem, maybe Yeah, write something about how, yeah, just do some journaling and talk. Those are the things I want to do at the time. Anyway, so as soon as I start climbing, the fear factor starts increasing more and more. And at this point, the time is 12 o'clock. And I need to be back before the dark because first of all, I had to return the bike to someone and secondly, I've got my flight tomorrow, so I've got to prepare for it. I also wanted to catch this waterfall on the way back because there are loads of beautiful waterfalls on the way back. There's this one I had my eyes on, and if I want to catch it, if I want to bathe in it, if I want to soak myself in its beauty, I had to leave at a certain hour. And based on how much time it took me to climb, I knew that would take me at least 5 hours to get back to my bike. So based on all of this, I decided that I just had to, I need to start getting back at this hour. There was a cutoff, right? Right, so I'm on the mountain, I'm looking around me, and I'm perched on this in this very precarious position, because the fall is, if I fall down, it's very rocky, and you have to hold onto things very tightly, and if you fall down, it's going to be a straight fall hundreds of meters down to your death. And because you're in a subdued state, give me a second. And it's perched on these rocks that I start feeling the kind of fear that I probably hadn't even felt. Probably felt a few past prior, but I hadn't felt more than maybe a few times, maybe more times than I can count in my hands or fingers. And it was something like God was telling me that you want to go for glory, or do you want to just, maybe prioritize your life. And I started thinking about George Valerie Wright, who might have been the first person to actually summit Everest. The reason most people don't know about him is that he never made it back. Start thinking about him, start thinking about the fact that, okay, what do I care more about? Because every step I take now has a certainty, because it was not so much about the difficulty of at this point it was literal rock climbing, right? Because the angle is very steep, you're using your hands and your feet. So at this point it was literal rock climbing. I didn't have much experience rock climbing. I've done a bit of it, but very limited. And I hadn't done the mountain in a long time. Like, this was the first mountain, the second mountain I'd done. Mount Patu was the first one I'd done in a bloody long time, right? So I wasn't really equipped for these things. I hadn't expected it to be so difficult. And also I think the psychological state I was in probably changed the perception of difficulty, perception of risk. It also affects your decision making, right? So I think that had a big role to play. And yeah, at a certain point I just made the call that, you know what, so close, but we just won't be able to do it. It's far more important to continue to exist and chase the other goals I've got for my life instead of just going for this one teeny goal. So that's what I decided to do, and then I just sit there where I am, where I make that decision for the next 10 minutes, and I just contemplate that present moment. And it was really interesting to be in that particular state of mind, having accepted defeat, having accepted that loss, because that mattered a lot to me, and I took that back with me, right? Because all the way back to my bike for the next 6 hours, it took a long time to get all the way back. The weight of that kept on increasing. I just felt like I should have pushed myself, I could have pushed myself. Now that I've got so much more distance away from that moment and from that state of mind, this is what I would have to say about that. I think I could have pushed myself, but I think I had to prepare, being able to navigate that moment and navigate those kinds of moments and those kinds of states of mind and those kinds of emotions. I had to prepare for that early, before the actual mountain climb, before the expedition, before the endeavor. I had to prime myself, I had to prepare myself that, there'll probably come a moment during this climb where you might feel like you don't have what it takes, or the risk might seem way too much for you to take on. But at that moment, you gotta look at the real risk, and you gotta remove your own filter, which changes the risk perception, right? I also talk about Alex Honnold. So Alex Honnold, the guy who climbed Yosemite, free soloing, but his risk perception would be so different, so radically different from mine. And I never want to get to that risk perception, but nor do I want my risk perception to be the kind of risk perception I had at the top. I'm still conflicted about that, because I did feel it's mind over matter, that's true. I also did feel that your gut, if it tells you something, you gotta listen to it, right? That's what people tell you. But sometimes your gut might want to take the easy route out, and your mind, if it's got loftier goals in mind, so that was always like climbing Mount Agung. It's not a lofty goal by any stretch of the imagination, but it's symbolic of something that your mind has been set upon. But then your gut, feeling something, might tell you that you know what, it's just not worth going through with it. At that point, you've got to listen to your mind. So I'm not a big believer in gut instincts. You've got to train your gut to listen to your mind, and you've got to make those two work in tandem, right? Because if you just listen to the one, what is the gut? The gut is the feeling part of you. So does the gut feel anything, or why do we say it's gut feeling? Because we feel it here, right? Because your brain influences certain hormones, which then influence your gut, how your gut feels, and then that probably is where the phrase came from. But with all the distance that I've got, with all the, I think I could have gone for it. But before that, I would have needed to prepare. I would have needed to tell myself that I've just got to be able to be ready for these moments. I didn't, so I have to start going back. And then I do start going back. Right, so just to finish up, I made the decision that we gotta finish. We've gotta make the call. If the gut's telling us something at this point in time, we just gotta listen to the gut as much as we probably don't want to listen to it. And yeah, so we cut it short. It's just 200 meters below. I was reminiscent of George Mallory, where if he did decide not to go through with it, then he probably did it just a few hundred at the third step. There's a name for that step. I think it's called the Hillary step now. He made the call. That's the last step, right? Once you cross that step, it's smooth sailing the rest of the way to the summit of Mount Everest. It's just literally yeah, but I had to make the call because it was, I can put myself in that state, and I can see why I made that decision. And I mean, that's not even a big loss, right? The funny thing about losses in life is that if that was Mount Everest, I would have spent 100k in getting to that point, and then if I had decided not to, maybe my gut had told me not to go through with that, and that would have hurt a lot more. This was just a random mountain in Bali. It wasn't anything special. I mean, the tallest mountain in Bali, but Bali is a tiny island, and in terms of the altitude of this mountain, it's not even in the top 1,000 probably in the world. It's one of the taller volcanic mountains. Yeah, the thing about losses, you don't want to have losses on your ledger, on your scoreboard. But life's just gotta, yeah, it's inevitable that you will, right? So you're gonna have somebody that got away, and just, yeah, this was one of those. So I start climbing down, but the climb down to it was very difficult. Because it was difficult because of one particular reason. It wasn't really risky or dangerous. It was difficult because it was so slippery, right? So when you run in, which you can while you're going down, you can slip and you can just fall down tens of meters. So you've got to hold onto the trees. You've got to use them to navigate, maneuver. Yeah, so that was an interesting climb. And then I meet 3 people who are climbing up, as I said. They are going to spend the night at the top, and they invite me to join them on the island. We talk about my failed attempt. I talk about how miserable I feel, how much burdened my heart feels, and we have such a great chat that one of those chaps, he was 18 and he already climbed Mount Agung tons of times, and he was a budding mountaineer. He was, it was really interesting to hear him talk about his passion of mountain climbing. And then, even the climb down, at one point I lost my earbuds. So I had to go all the way back and then look for my earbuds through this foliage. Yeah. And finally I make the way back, all the way back, but it takes me far longer than anticipated, and at that point in time the sun's already set. The sunset, it was oh so gorgeous. The fog had just started coming into the mountains. The peak of the mountain was still burning bright with the sun on it, the sunshine on it. But the rest of the mountain was being shrouded in these clouds, and I was very soon to be shrouded in these clouds. And it just creates such a magical, such a fantastic vibe. Yeah, that was one of the best things I've witnessed in my life. Like, honestly, it was just so gorgeous. Even though I was tied to my bones, it just felt so magical. And then, I get on my bike, start making my way back, and the roads, I genuinely, I don't think I've found worse roads I've seen worse roads in my life. Like, it's dark, right? And then these couple of people, they send me a way, that's a way, but they don't tell me that that's the worst way possible to get to where I'm looking to go. So I get on the bike and I get stuck, and it's just the most horrible. Like, the potholes were the size of boulders, the potholes were the size of literal scooters, the potholes were insanely, the roads are so cratered that I felt like I was riding on Mars or maybe Uranus. Not Uranus, because Uranus wouldn't have potholes. It was an insane thing. And then finally get out of that mess and get back on the main road, and it's a beautiful ride back home, back to my hotel, back to my homestay rather. Riding in the dark, riding in the, enjoying the Bali night for the last time. Well, not maybe for the last time in my life, but for the last time in a long time. It was a beautiful ride back. But again, the weight of the loss, the weight of the failure, it gnawed at my heart. And as it should, right? If the losses don't gnaw at your heart, rage against the dying of the light. That's one of my favorite poems. It speaks to that notion, right? That sure, you will lose in life, and sure, you'll fail in life. That's just inevitable. Unless you're God, you will have to put up with that. What you don't ever want to get to, I don't want to get to that. Monks, for example, they might be happy with that state. They wouldn't even be in a state where they had to face losses, because there would be no such thing as a loss for them. But personally for me, I don't ever want to be at a stage where I can, and I was at that stage at one point. Part of my mind was like, because I did want to become a monk, right? But one part of my mind was like, you know what? Sure, this is a loss, but you can always recoup, you can always redeem yourself, or you can always find a way back. But that's the thing, you can't always, right? Let's assume a finite life, that every moment that you spend is a finite moment. It's a precious moment, because that moment's not going to come back in time. One of the greatest, this is, it's just going on a tangent, one of the greatest mindset flaws I've had, I still have it to a large degree, I'm trying to get rid of it, it's operating, because I do believe that we are going to fix mortality very soon. When I say very soon, I mean relatively. It's probably going to take 30 years, that's my best guess. But if you got the money in 30 years, and if you're alive, I think you will be able to add hundreds of, even thousands of years to your life. And the problem with that kind of thinking is that it makes you very complacent. It makes you, I wouldn't say unambitious, right? Because I do want to do great things in life. But then when you operate by that basis, that you've got a lot of time to do these things, you look at it. Because ambition is not just about what you want to do, it's also about the time frame in which you want to do it. It's also about a sense of urgency. It's not just a sense of purpose, it's also a sense of urgency. It's not just the scope of the size of things, it's also the scope of the time frame of things. And so I was always missing that time frame piece, and the reason for that was, well, partly because of this. So I'm actually working on that. But anyways, my point is that I told myself that, I'm going to come back to Mount Agung and do this again because it gnawed at me, and I just wanted to feel like there'll come a time when I will have conquered it. But then I realized I actually won't, because for one thing, there's loads of things I want to do in life, such that, secondly, I do want to operate by the assumption that, well, this actually should have come first. I do want to operate by the assumption that I've got a finite life. There's only so many things I can do. There's only so many books I can read. There's only so many conversations I can have. There's only so many movies I can watch. There's only so many mountains I can climb. There's only so many poems I can write. There's only so many books I can write. There's only so many breaths I can take. There's only so many moments I have in life. And when you operate by that basis, and by the way, that's the rational basis by which to operate, right? Because hoping for a trajectory to become the future and then not basing your life and your life philosophy on that, it is the most foolhardy and the most foolish way to live life. And that's the mistake you made for the longest time in life, right? Yeah, so I want to fix that, But anyways, I finally reached home at like really late at night. I had to call the person, and yeah, that's my Bali adventures done. Probably will talk about the rest of the Bali adventures maybe tomorrow. Or do you want to do that right now? Yeah, just the highlights, right? Yeah, I don't need to talk about the whole trip. It was a wonderful trip. Spent almost 2 months there. And some of the highlights were obviously climbing the 2 mountains, swimming in the sea, went so far from the shore 3-4 times, I think 4 times, and it was magical, right? The first time around, actually I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, yeah. So what do we want to do? Yeah. Oh, quickly, I want to talk about climbing the mountains in Malaysia, right? And the fascination that I've got with mountains. I'll quickly talk about that. So I go to Malaysia, and then I start talking with this guy. He found me on, he sent me an invite on Y Combinator, matching platform, where he said that I love your profile, would love to work on something with you. So we start chatting, and he tells me, he's giving a call, I think, and then I tell him my plans, and he tells me that, you know what, forget your plan, go to Cameron Highlands, because based on what you're looking for, based on the kinds of things that interest you, Cameron Highlands is the place for you. So I didn't even know about Cameron Highlands before the conversation, but that's where I'm headed. And spent 3 days there. Every single day I go out to the mountains. It was gorgeous. I just loved them. I didn't know how much I loved the mountains, right? Just being on mountains, just the perspective, the symbolism of it. Yeah, being away from it all, just you and your thoughts. And the physical challenge of it. And listening to a good podcast or a good audio while you're doing that, it's just as good as it gets, right? Yeah, I did that 3 times over there. That was beautiful. On the first day I wanted to climb this mountain, I got lost a few times, so I wasn't able to actually summit the mountain. And the best view I got, because it was a rainforest, very highly dense forest. So I couldn't really see didn't really have great views. There was this one point where I had some views that were not great. That was quite anticlimactic. The third day, again, it's the same problem, right? The views are not great. But yeah, I just fell in love with mountains. I'm gonna say again, but I haven't done it the way I did it on this trip. So I can't wait to do that. I actually made it a goal as soon as I can, as soon as I'm in a position to. I'm gonna go to the mountains every month. Yeah, and then I just for some reason after taking this traveling, I just become obsessed with maps. When I was a kid, I had this atlas. I used to go through it and go over it all the bloody time. Like, that was my favorite book to go over. I used to imagine things. I had this encyclopedia, and I used to go through that. These were my 2 favorite books. But the atlas, like, I just used to love that. And it's been such a long time since I've actually used an atlas, but now obviously you've got Google Maps, so you don't need an atlas. Lately I've become obsessed with Google Maps. Sometimes when I'm bored, I just go on Google Maps and just find a random place and just look at it, satellite images, and yeah, it's so much fun. Yeah, but also makes me realize one of the things I realized on that Bali trip is we were decimated wildlife, we were decimated our biodiversity, and it hurts. It really hurts. Because Bali was supposed to be a tropical paradise, and in my idea, in my book, tropical paradise is supposed to be full of life, not just human life, but life of all sorts. That wasn't the case there, not at all. Because I went to coral reefs, didn't see a lot of life there. Went to the mountains, went to the rainforest, went to the backcountry, went to the sea, didn't really see much life in any of these places. It hurt, and it made me realize we want to work on this project. It's just accelerated the timelines to work on this project because we don't have a lot of time left before we can save the biodiversity. Yeah. So I realized that. The other thing I realized is the world is much smaller than we think, right? So the world might seem massive to our tiny human brains, but then when you start zooming out, and the best way to do this is find a place that you can actually understand the perspective of, right? So massive place, but that you can grasp the size of. So as an example, maybe the Statue of Liberty, or maybe the Grand Canyon. Maybe the Grand Canyon is not the best example. Statue of Liberty, maybe the Pyramids of Giza, maybe the biggest mines in the world. So there's this great mine in the United States, which is massive, insanely massive, right? But you can, at a certain vantage point, you can see the entire thing. Another example of this could be a city. Yeah, a city, right? So a city is something that you can grasp the size of because you travel to and fro one corner of the city to another. And the city I used to live in my younger days, I would travel from one side of the city to another side, and that was a pretty big city. I think the population was 2 million, so it's obviously sizable. But you can grasp the size because you travel that distance every day, right? And once you go to that city, take any city of your choosing, like pick Tokyo. Tokyo is an extreme example, so maybe not Tokyo, but let's say London, right? Hyde Park. Now Hyde Park is something whose perspective you can easily grasp because you can go from one side of the Hyde Park to another side in one short run. So pick that and then start zooming out. At a certain point in time, you will realize that when your screen is London with Hyde Park, you'll see that Hyde Park occupies a sizable part of London. Like, it might seem tiny, but it occupies a sizable portion of London. And then once you zoom out from London to the UK, you realize that, okay, London is a few significant percentage points of the UK. And then once you zoom out of UK onto the world, onto Europe, you realize that that UK occupies a sizable portion of the continent. And then you zoom out from the continent onto the world map, and then again you get the same realization. And the point is, and then you look at the world map and you realize that no places were untouched, right? Because even deep in the Amazon forest, you can now find human-named villages and settlements. There's literally no place on the planet which has been untouched by humans. Which is kind of saddening. It's saddening because, first of all, I would have wanted to be the first to some of these places. Well, I mean, that's the selfish reason. It's saddening because there's no place on the planet which is untouched by human influence, which means that it has not been able to exist in its own unique way and flourish and evolve in its own unique way, because humans have affected everything. And I would have loved to, that's why NASA has got these protocols, right, where humans, when they go to, or human things like Endeavour, space rovers, when they go to these planets and places, the protocols, the quarantine protocols, they are so stringent that no human bacteria would reach these places because they want to study the place as it existed. Unfortunately, even though there might be a good chance that the Earth is the only place with these kinds of, with biodiversity of life, there won't be any place where we will be able to study this. Even the deepest points of the ocean. Ray Dalio, he just started this company called OceanX, which is, it sounds like a rip-off of SpaceX, it is a bit funny. Where he wants to use that as a vehicle, as a channel to study the oceans and maybe join the ranks of what the name of the Stockton Rush, and yeah, those biofouls. Yeah, even the deepest parts of the ocean, right? I remember reading about this one guy who went to Mariana Trench, touched the bottom of the ocean, the lowest point on Earth, and what does he find there? A beer can. Yeah. And it's not that crazy because a beer can, I mean, if you just, yeah. But it's still a bit sad to think about. Yeah, so it just basically made me think, made the mission that I've got in my mind, made this project I've got in my mind more urgent. I'll actually start putting some of the pieces in place, and I hopefully will be able to launch something that can move the needle in a substantial way very soon. Because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time left, right? Because the problem with climate change, a lot of people don't get this, that humans are damn smart creatures and we love living, we love surviving. We'll find a way to survive no matter what. What's going to suffer is our climate, is wildlife. That's what we got to protect. Yeah, that's what we got to protect. I think that's all I've got for today. I'm gonna catch you soon, talking about next time we're on. We're gonna be talking about the future of work. So that's exciting. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Fun. Yeah. Cheers.